There is growing concern over legal issues that are now facing real estate photographers using tools that can change daylight photos into twilight photos and also to virtually stage images using programs like Gemini AI, also known as Nano Banana, and also ChatGPT. There are cases when this could put you and your clients into legal implications. And so in this video, I want to cover some of the bigger issues that are facing us right now as real estate photographers using AI, what you can do legally to protect yourself, and what you can expect going forward. But before we dive in, just a real quick disclaimer. I am not a lawyer, so this information should not be considered legal advice. It's always a good idea to chat with a legal professional who can give you advice tailored to your specific needs. Let's start with this daytime image, which was turned into a twilight photo in Google Gemini and also in ChatGPT. We'll look at other images in a sec, but these images have some legal issues, with the first issue being the logo on the bottom of the image made by Google Gemini. Now, Google Gemini, also known as Nano Banana, places this logo on the bottom of their images, but many people have been removing it, which is very likely illegal. Google's terms state that you can't remove, obscure, or alter any of their branding, logos, or legal notices from some of their services, and one of those services is Gemini. Even with that aside, removing the Gemini logo could violate the US Digital Millennium Copyright Act, also known as DMCA, which makes it illegal to intentionally remove or alter what's known as copyright management information, which can be a watermark or a logo. There are also ethical considerations to consider, and even though a logo wouldn't be, for instance, on ChatGPT images, there are some bigger issues that face us with these legal implications, and I want to get to those next. Before I do, though, I did want to mention just real quick that if you did want to learn more about real estate photography, I'd invite you to take a look at my courses on real estate photography. I've got online courses that cover professional interiors, expert editing, exteriors, videography, business and marketing, and I've also written a series of books on real estate photography as well, and I have links to all of that down in the description of this video. The next issue to consider, and you probably already started thinking about this when I started talking about logos, is what about MLS branding? If you have to leave that logo on those images, your MLS, the multiple listing service is what we call it here in the United States, they might have a problem with it because most MLSs do not allow you to have any logos or watermarks, any type of branding whatsoever. Now, you could check with your local MLS and see if it's okay to leave provenance watermarks or logos. And provenance watermarks or logos, those are things that talk about the origination so that AI becomes safe and people aren't fooled by it. But here's where it gets a little bit trickier, and there's some other implications here to follow that are somewhat tangential to this. But the first thing to consider is when you start getting into this realm of identifying things as AI on listing services, people are going to see that, and right now there's a lot of people that don't like to be fooled any longer by AI, and when they're out looking for a house, if they get a whiff of something being AI, it might be a turnoff. Even though they might like the property and the photos are good, I think in the back of their mind there would also be association of something just not quite legit, just something that's not quite right up front and forthcoming about the photos or the house, the property, the listing agent, anything like that. So something to consider also is you don't want to bias then people with too many logos, things like that. Once again, ChatGPT doesn't have any logos, and of course that is somewhat safer to use, but not necessarily. And this next issue goes beyond just ChatGPT and Google Gemini, which are known for this quite a bit, but it also can affect just any editing that you do to a photo, especially using AI. That has to do with structure. In the case of this twilight photo that was created by Google Gemini, there are a few things that changed structurally that could potentially make this image a violation of MLS rules. Notice how the grass was improved in the twilight image created by Gemini, making the grass completely green, but in the actual daytime photo, we can see the grass has large brown patches. The twilight photo from Gemini also messed up the house number, making it unreadable. It removed the Christmas lights, which is okay and actually a good thing. But the issue here is that AI tools like Gemini and ChatGPT don't change an image. Instead, they completely recreate a new image for every edit. This increases the risk of inadvertently changing property-affecting items, and along with some other bigger issues. We can see a similar problem even with this virtually staged interior, where the fireplace tile work was completely changed by Gemini, and something funky happened to the flooring. But there's something else to note that would be necessary to make this image acceptable for listing services, which leads me to the next issue. The next issue has to do with virtual staging, and it doesn't have anything to do necessarily with ChatGPT. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Google Gemini. It has to do with virtual staging overall, even if you used traditional virtual staging software like Apply Design, because this has become stricter. Recently, many MLSs started requiring that virtually staged images have text that clearly states that an image has been virtually staged or digitally modified. And they also need to show the original unstaged photo, which in a way can defeat the purpose of virtual staging, since potential buyers will see what agents might be trying to hide, such as holes in walls, damaged flooring, dirty carpet, other things that virtually staged or even real furniture might cover up. And if you also use then Google Gemini, now you have two logos you probably have to have on there. Or I should say two types of text. One, you've got the Gemini logo, and then you've got this virtually staged thing. When we talked about the turnoff to potential home buyers when they get the whiff of AI, this of course would be even more of a turnoff. The next issue to consider, which is usually on the forefront of most photographers' minds, and that's copyright. This has been a gray area for quite a while, especially over the last few years, because AI is outpacing lawmakers and regulators. So basically, the way that it stands right now under US copyright law is that if an image is completely made by an AI engine, then there's no human intervention. The human, you don't own any copyright to it, even if you came up with a wonderful prompt to put in to create an image. So that means that if something isn't copyrighted that you made, then does your client have access to it for the MLS? Because real estate agents need to have the rights to use images that they post in these listing services. So you would have to inform your clients legally to tell them where that image originated from, and they would have to ensure that they have then responsibility and the rights to use that. And here's where it gets tricky, is that sure, you might have just virtually staged an image. Sure, you might have just turned a daylight photo into a twilight. But don't forget that engines like Gemini, Nano Banana, and also ChatGPT, they're not editing your photos. They're recreating entirely new images, which means, under the guise of US copyright law, those images do not belong to you anymore, and you do not necessarily hold copyright to them. That's still, though, a gray area, because Google Gemini does kind of leave it out there that, oh yes, you still own your photos. Well, but it's completely generated. Someone could argue against it. You're wondering, well, isn't this really getting into the weeds? Yes, it is, but there's a reason for that. And that's that there are home buyers out there who want to pull out of escrow for any reason that they want, but it wouldn't necessarily be part of their contract. So they find other ways to get out of it. And they'll find all kinds of things. So that's why a lot of these real estate brokerages, they're very cautious about what they put on the MLS. They don't want to get a lawsuit or have somebody pull out of escrow or do something otherwise, renegotiate pricing because of something that they felt was deceptive. Now, the good news is that right now under US copyright law, if you only used AI to edit the photo, then there's really no problem. You still own copyright. It's just another editing tool. That's the way it has been all along. And that brings us into the last issue I want to talk about here, and that's that is using Adobe AI safe? I mean, a lot has changed recently, and they've done a lot with Firefly. So do these things still hold? Well, as you may know, Adobe came up with commercially safe AI in their products because they trained their models using their Adobe stock. So that's safe to use, and they don't have restrictions where you have to put, for instance, their AI logo on there. They can embed provenance watermarks digitally inside the file, and that might be something that your MLS may like, but more than likely by the time they syndicate it, some of that stuff will get crushed out of there anyways. But you are pretty safe unless you do something else that would violate some of these other things earlier. For instance, If you used an Adobe product to completely make an image, then you don't hold any copyright to it because there wasn't enough human intervention into it. The other thing too, when it comes to virtually staging or changing items, you may have to also put wording on those photos if they're going to be on a listing service to say that they were digitally altered or virtually staged. So these things are constantly evolving. As AI evolves, laws and regulations are constantly trying to keep up with it. I'm doing my best to do the same, and as things continue to grow, I'm going to stay on top of it, and I will keep you posted.